All right. Thank you so much for your attention and your time. I know it's already end of the day in UK. Thank you so much for being here, and I would like to say thank you for this opportunity to present as well. Before my presentation, I would like to acknowledge my presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations here in Canada. The area known as Takaronto has been under care by Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and Huron-Wendat, and it is home now to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities as well as mine. I'm Reimagining Living Ontologies, and this documentation is actually a reflection of um, a, a body of work that has been taking quite a few years to develop, and it was also presented as part of my comprehensive exams as part of my PhD degree here in Toronto Arts at York University. First of all, to give you a little bit of sort of overall idea, Reimagining Living Ontologies is a performative piece that's taking place in a very specific immersive environment and involves two live performers. Amy Hillis is a traditionally trained musician, violinist, as well as professor at York University. And so I myself collaborated with Amy, and as a part of this performance, we had a technological element as well that incorporated scanning or capturing biophysiology of a human body. So in this case, Amy's biological processes. And I use that data to incorporate into this technological performance and piece. Starting this project, actually, it's very much in line with my overall research questions and ideas that I've been exploring for many years, and I'm continuing in my dissertation as well. I'm interested to kind of unpack how we currently work with data, and especially data that is a sensitive type of information that comes from a human body. So I'm interested to look into current practices, not only within artistic community, but also in technological and scientific realms as well. It's crucial for me to identify these practices and see how myself as an artist can deal with a lot of challenges and how to say crucial sort of burning questions, how we are utilizing data in present age, especially with now AI practices coming into play. So it's really important for me to critically look at these practices, what's happening, and offer something different. And as offering for myself, I'm compelled to develop systems and performative setups where I'm working with this data in a unique way. And I will show you later in the demo what I mean by that. So the space where I developed this work is actually this very DIY dome that is constructed in the basement. It's part of the Media Futures department, and with generous support from Professor Tyen, she allowed me to come and play in that space. And I would say that this it's not 360 dome, it's more like 270-degree dome, because 360 would entitle a whole sphere. So when you enter, there's a little bit sort of the floor that takes away from the full dome experience, but we still call it like a dome, projection dome. I would say it's not perfect. It's very sort of a place to build prototypes, experiment, and it's been a home for me for many, many months. And I really sort of fell in love with this, with this structure. And I had this great opportunity to just be in that space and create my art. So I've been very, very lucky in that sense that I had a full freedom to utilize these technologies and do my experiments. So during that period of working in this dome space, I was working with a setup that was already built in, and depending on each location, there could be different systems installed that support the immersive projection. So in my case, it wasn't that complex. There was already application running that only took a video feed from my computer. So for me, it was more like, what do I want to project? Like, what is my story to tell? And I think it was really important to have this time to experiment because it's not only, it was such a huge shift for me working in a sort of a flat 2D format into this suddenly spherical space. And I kind of also realized a lot of visuals were not, how to say, were not really fitted for the space. So I was really working through kind of like just purely aesthetically figuring out what sort of visual works for this spherical canvas. And then as I sort of start to learn what works and what doesn't, only afterwards I started to really focus on the biosensing and data. So there was a lot of kind of period where I was doing a lot of experiments and not even touching the biosensing. But bringing in biosensing into my space of working, there are very sort of specific goals that I wanted to sort of activate as part of this project. First, I wanted to kind of allow not only a performer who is hooked up to the biosensing to almost uh, to almost like learn about their own body in new ways. So there's some sort of like a looking for novel ways of knowing, novel ways of encountering one's body, but also to create a space for everybody else. uh, we had an audience, and I was collaborating with Amy as her secondary collaborator. So there's not only the singular body that is on a display, there is also the audience and collaborators that also participate in viewing and trying to understand what's going on. So it's a really complex dynamic where I'm looking at the sort of exploring this human biophysiology from different angles. And of course, to actually create a sturdy, robust system that can support all of these interactive processes and data handling, which I'm happy to show you in a demo after this presentation. So in order for me to harness this data, I have to use a very specific technology. Right now, the technology that I have in my possession is actually developed by my professor at York University, Professor Mark David Hossail, and his collaborator, who is biomedical engineer Alan Macy. So there is a different, I would say, kind of collection of different hardware devices mixed with some novel software gadgets that sort of all come together to get this data actually approachable. And I have to I would like to say that without their kind of technologies and innovations, I probably would need to go a different route and look for different sensors. And kind of the reason why I've chosen to work with this kind of technology is because right now there's a lot of technology available, and also affordable technology available to that reads different processes of human body. And I could just mention a couple like Epoch, Muse that works with brains. There's Bitolino that captures a lot of like heart processes, and so there's a lot of sensors available on the market. However, they it's really hard to gather them all under same hood. So this particular technology allows me to capture different parts of the body at the same time, and it's been processed in one location. So that is kind of the advantage over working with lots of different sensors, lots of different applications. Therefore, this was really suitable for my goal. And I can also show you here, like, so this technology basically uses medical grade electrodes that you can glue on your skin. So I have here for my heart, and I have here for my muscle, and then that all goes into um, these hardware units. They are by Biotech. And then that signal gets interpreted further, which is now the work of my professor and Alan Macy, which deals with information conversion into meaningful data. Um, so the way kind of to show you kind of maybe crude data flow to kind of roughly understand how I'm using this data, I created this diagram. I hope it makes sense. So first, I am capturing two types of data, and this data is all in real time. It is not recorded or stored. It's pretty much flowing in real time. I can't go back. I can't. It's basically like a life. And also, when I'm talking in terms of the live data, I am also kind of dependent on a lot of these technologies to work. So say, for example, these devices need to have a battery, the battery needs to be full power. So working with data in real time with a lot of these technologies hooked up, there is a potential that there is certain deviation. So there could be a latency, you know, like I would say that the data is not perfectly accurate. Like say, for example, like a heart monitor in a hospital, it will be a very much more accurate data. This data is accurate if everything runs smoothly, but there's always things to you know to get delayed or some hiccups. So I'm fully aware that the data that I'm using is in real time, but there is also a lot of artifacts introduced in this process. And the way I sort of wanted to structure this performance would be two parts. So I had the one part was where I only used Amy's biophysiology. So this visualization represented her heart and her hand muscle as she was playing the violin, and it was all her. I was not participating anyhow in that first part of performance. However, in the second performance that had this like a patterned visualization, it became more complex because I started to participate as an artist with Amy. So we would see her biophysiological data triggering a lot of elements in the scene, but I also co-created with her by making some decisions on some color changes or some intensity. So it was actually more like a collaborative piece in the second part of the performance. And so here I'm just showing that for the first part, her muscle data was creating this feedback loop, and I will also show you in the demo what it roughly looks like with demonstrating with my muscle. And all her heart data was generating these geometries. that was just like flowing really beautifully in the space. And for the second one, it was a little bit more complex and more abstract, where the patterns were driven by the biodata, but also different behaviors were introduced with my kind of actions. So I want to a little bit talk about the challenges and this kind of the afterthoughts after this project. So the challenges is like kind of the most like pivotal challenge, and I would say it's kind of more condition, is that the data becomes invisible, not only to the performer but also to the audience. And what I mean by that is that we do see the data triggering and affecting stuff, but we don't know how. So this kind of separation from knowing what, for example, heart is doing, or what the heartbeat, how heartbeat is contributing to the piece. So that was actually the condition that I really thought about for quite a long time, because myself, who created everything from scratch, I know exactly every little thing that affects, I know it so well. But for example, Amy, who is a main performer, she doesn't have that knowledge, and the audience is even more separated from the process of creating the space. And that could be an interesting situation as well. So I'm kind of like, we're working with this area of ambiguity, of data ambiguity, but also how can I maybe give some information to the audience so they know. And I will show very quickly my sort of solution to that, the data invisibility problem. Another challenge is that this project took, actually, the total research that I've been doing with this technology was 3 years. And this piece itself took maybe closer to a year to develop through stages of testing. But also, what's really kind of tricky with this work is that it's very unique to one human body. So even though I developed this piece based on my own physiology, sitting at home on a computer, running all the data, doing all the measurements, when I hooked up Amy to this technology, I realized that, hold on a second, this is not working. So I kind of realized that this work had to be really tailored specifically to Amy's biophysiology. So there's a lot of kind of fine tuning that is part of this work as well, that takes a lot of time, and absence of narrative. And what I mean by that is that when we look this sort of data abstract painting, um, there's always this kind of a need to find a narrative. I guess like it's also our human psyche is always trying to connect to something that we recognize or know. And when you're sitting in a very immersive space with these visuals, like bombarding your senses and auditory senses, I'm kind of, I was a little bit apprehensive that there could be some sort of what's going on, like what am I seeing? But I guess again, even though those are all challenges, I looked also on the other side that these challenges also offered a very unique situations for looking at the data-driven artwork without maybe fully understanding what's going on, or what part of physiology is responsible to certain things. The kind of space of not knowing and kind of trying to know and understand with your sort of kind of gut instinct, not maybe so much with your intelligent, like rummaging. I thought that it was very interesting approach working with sensitive data that is very personal, but it was explored in this really ambiguous and beautiful ways without any kind of narratives. And I think that I actually loved to continue that sort of ambiguity because it kind of offers a lot of room for different narratives for every single person could interpret in a very unique way. In terms of the outcomes, or like sort of elements that kind of developed as this project progressed. It was really interesting to see how I have to communicate with professional musician. So I'm coming from the space of, say, like creating this complex digital system, and Amy is a performer that has her, wealth of knowledge, and the way she communicates her craft. It was really interesting finding these overlapping spaces where I had to explain really complex technical elements, and I had to understand what Amy was doing in terms of her improvisation and her work. So there's constantly looking for new language, new communication. And I would say that this project, not only in this particular collaboration, in other collaborations has encountered similar things where I have to communicate, find common language, common understanding with other collaborators that are coming from different disciplines. Um, Definitely, there was a moment of some realization of physiology that happens within your body. Like, we normally don't really hear our heartbeat unless maybe in a moment of stress or maybe somewhere submerging in a bath. So it was just beautiful to encounter the moments where I could sonify the heartbeat, and then we all were part of that moment of listening and seeing certain biological processes. So it was just really out of body experience of one's body, and it was really, really interesting. And of course, working with sort of data, it's constantly challenges, and I take it very seriously. My responsibility, how I'm harnessing the data, how I'm handling the data, and especially in current age of data, just madness, and I would say also the practices that are very hidden, and we are actually giving away so much data that we don't even realize. It was really important for me to really think about it, how I'm taking this data, how I'm handling this data, and how this data is introduced back to this person who shares this data. And of course, I'm continuing this work, and I'm actually will be developing a lot of different types of scenarios where this biophysiological data is explored in immersive spaces. So keep in touch, and you can always reach out to me if it's something you're interested in. So this is this is my last slide, and I'm gonna quickly jump. Do I still have time? I want to quickly show you this kind of performance setup to kind of give you an idea. So right now I am connected to muscle reading and also my heart reading. And this whole system I developed inside Touch Designer. And so I'm having all of the data is flowing in. So you can see that like all of these changes means that every single strand of data is actually pumping into this touch designer, and it's ready to be used. And in terms of kind of what data I can take, so from muscle, I only can take activity of my hand muscle, so how intensely I'm using the muscle. But for example, from my heart, I can take different sort of information. I can have my heartbeat, which is BPM. I can measure respiration. I can measure respiration rate. R2R, which is sort of the space between the heartbeats. So there's actually quite a lot of data can be unpacked from the heart. And the way it sort of goes into my performance is I will show you those two parts. So this is the first part where it was only using a heart and a muscle. So I'm gonna try to a little bit demonstrate. If I'm a little bit calming, relaxing my arm, I'm just gonna lay it on the table so I don't engage my muscle at all. So, and I'll try to a little bit. So again, I will tell you something. When I worked with Amy, who was playing the violin, we did a lot of fine tuning to kind of get the visualization that I was happy with. Right now, I just hooked myself into the system, and I already came to realize that the tuning that was done for Amy's, how she's using the arm, obviously is not the way I'm using the arm. But nevertheless, you can see some artifacts generated based on the muscle and the data. And to kind of make a little bit more sense, I can show you very fast. Here I have the little bit explanation. So the heart information here that is coming in. So for example, I have the heartbeat, I have respiration. So these are all these geometric rectangulars. But the muscle is what creates the blurriness effect. So the rotation of these rectangulars comes from all the heart, and the blurriness comes from the muscle. And as Amy is playing the violin, then she's also controlling like how the blurriness, how this, the washing effect is working based on her activity of the hand. And for the second one, which is a little bit more complex, but I will show you roughly the kind of the look of it. So again, in terms of this 3D, like this tunneling system, what I had going here was, so I can just show you the architecture. So there's a lot of things coming together. But the idea was to kind of break it down much more simpler, is that I would have like a pattern. The pattern was all the kind of the colors, the opacities of each little segment is driven by biodata. But then I was also kind of adding my own choices to this pattern building for the final performance. And then this pattern was overlaid on this like a 3-dimensional cone that also had like a movement and behavior. And I was also able to control that. It's sort of really highly technical, and I feel like my work, in a way, I almost like kind of had to separate two parts of the brain. One was kind of building, constructing this system, and the other one is thinking artistically how much I'm allowing the biodata to dictate this narrative or this visualization. What does it mean? How does it, what is sort of the impact it leaves? And I don't have a clear answer to it, because I feel like, to me, it's always work in progress. I always look at these works as these stages of prototyping, stages of experiments that once it's sort of working robustly, then I'm willing to present it. But I feel like as far as the investigation, the work still continues. And there's a lot of more questions that I ended up with having them before this project. So I think with this one, I would like to finish my presentation, and thank you so much. I would welcome maybe quickly some questions if we have time. Otherwise, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Kathy. Yes, I